welcome for week 3 of baking or cooking during COVID, I like to call it. We are going to be making double chocolate chip cookies today, so I hope you guys all got your recipes. If you guys have a mixer, like I have my trusty KitchenAid mixer, I will bring it. I just have to wipe off the counter, then I'll move it into frame. If you have one, you can use it. If not, a wooden spoon or hand mixer is fine. Welcome. The next I did have a couple of students post me and said they can't make it this week because it's too hot in their houses. So turning on the oven's not it's not a choice for them. So like I said, all videos will be available afterwards. And next week we're going to do a no-bake. We're going to do a no-bake cheesecake with a topping of your choice. So it could be chocolate, it could be Oreo, or I'm going to do a traditional berry fenouil flan. So that came out in the newsletter today. So I'm just going to quickly wipe down my countertop because I have cats and I don't trust that they don't walk them when I'm at work. And then we'll get started. I feel like cookies is one of my favorite things to make. I make them every semester, as well as any student who's in my math class this year knows I do as part of algebra too. So that's also a lot of fun. Alrighty, you guys got everything? Do you have any questions before we kind of get started? You guys got all you're gonna need bowls, a bowl, measuring cup, measuring spoon. If you don't have a hand mixer, that's fine, or a KitchenAid mixer, that's fine. You can use a wooden spoon. You might need to soften your butter a little bit because we want to cream and mix the butter in with the sugar. So if you don't have a mixer or hand mixer or anything, just have a bowl that's microwave safe, and we will melt the butter a little bit before we get it going. So we're going to get started. I just gotta grab another measuring cup. There. So how you guys doing? You had a good week? We all survived the heat, so that's a good thing. So for those who are ready to go right away, I see more people coming in as this goes on, so some people might be getting ready. We're going to start by, and sometimes I follow instructions and sometimes I don't, with any cookie base to get the fluffiest and softest cookies. The things we want to be conscious of is not over mixing them and not over baking them. Because if we over mix them, our dough is going to get tough and it's not going to have that nice soft chewy texture that we're looking for. And if we over bake them, then they get hard. So we're going to start by creaming our butter and our sugar. So creaming is just a word we use in cooking to say we're going to mix the butter and the sugar together really well. So you're going to put in both types of sugar, so your brown and your white, or granulate it, or light brown sugar if you have dark brown sugar. So brown sugar in this case, doesn't matter. And you're also going to put in your butter. So my butter's still a little on the harder side. I'm using unsalted. If you could also use margarine, they both work. And I just saw that question pop up. So yes, margarine works great. I tend to use margarine when I do this in foods class, and it's only because margarine comes pre-measured in half-cup blocks, which makes it really easy when you have 30 kids cooking. So yes, I'm gonna have to melt my butter a bit too because I kind of take from it whenever I need. If you're using actual butter, what's really neat is mine's a little, I have to put mine into a butter dish. What's really neat is most butter has a foil, which actually tells you where's 1 cup, half a cup, quarter cup. So when they say a stick's about a half a cup. So because I'm adventurous, I have hazelnuts and walnuts roasting in the oven, and I'm actually going to add them into the batter. So that's a fun thing about these. If I like to add stuff like walnuts, and that's about half a cup for me. I like adding things like walnuts and hazelnuts. And at school I won't because I have nut allergies, but that's something you can also do at home. And My bread went moldy. That's not good. And for those of you who saw, yes, I tend to keep my bread in the microwave, and it's only because I have a cat that'll steal it. If your butter's overly hard, 10 to 15 seconds in the microwave in a glass bowl will be perfect, and that'll just keep it a soft texture, because we don't want it super runny because it'll dissolve your sugar if it's too hot. So see, mine's melted down a little bit. Still has its shape, still a little bit of runny in there, but it's still good to go. All right, so I'm just gonna toss that in there. So I know we have some cookie fans in here, otherwise, do you guys have another favorite other than chocolate? Well, if you didn't like double chocolate, you wouldn't be here, but you guys have other favorites? Those of you can type or comment if you'd like to, and if you don't want to, that's cool. And my brown sugar's in the cupboard, sorry. Oh, peanut butter. One of my personal favorites. Actually, one of my favorite sandwiches is peanut butter and banana. Peanut butter and banana sandwiches on toast. So good. The other one I really like, molasses ginger. Love ginger cookie. Molasses ginger cookies. Chocolate chip. Chocolate chip's awesome. So we're going to, I'm doing a full recipe. I'm not halving or doubling or anything. So it's 3/4 of a cup of light brown sugar and 1/4 of a cup of regular granulated or white sugar, as we say, or refined sugar. For peanut butter cookies, I actually like to use the chunky peanut butter, and I'll actually keep extra salted peanuts on hand to add some to it. Hi guys. I kind of figured the last name is very unique. I'm just not going to say because I'm on video, but I saw the first, I figured those were your parents. And welcome. I'm glad that you guys came out. I did have one student that said it's too hot. They'll join next week. I'm just going to get a bigger spoon because one little thing for brown sugar, I don't know if you guys have them, maybe your grandparents have them, you can get them in the store. I call it it's a terracotta bear. Terracotta actually holds the moisture, so if you soak this in water and then toss it in whatever container you keep your brown sugar in, keeps your brown sugar soft. My grandma also used to say you could use like the heel of bread or rice. That would help it. I've seen rice and salt shakers to keep it fresh. But for gluten-free and that, I have the little terracotta bears, and I find they work super well. So your recipe will probably say packed sugar, and if it doesn't, for brown sugar, I tend to pack it down a little bit. All that means is I take the bottom of my spoon and I push it down in to make sure that it's even. I also have a measuring cup that'll have the full 2 cups in there, a full cup. So I'm just going to add the white sugar on top. Because then it's easier for me to measure a full cup. There, so I get mine in there. I'm just going to toss it all in. Fun random fact, did you know that hazelnuts are actually called filberts? I did not know this until Christmas this past year when I went looking for hazelnuts, because that's all I've ever called them is hazelnuts. And then I went and I'm like, I can't find the hazelnuts. And then it says on the container, filberts. And I'm like, that's a new one. But yes, a filbert is actually the proper name for a hazelnut is a filbert. That's your random nutty fact for today. So, are you guys all good? Get your butter and sugar in together? Aw, so we have one person in the chat who's going to, that's very neighborly to go to borrow a cup of sugar. That is awesome. That is something I would do. But my neighbors don't bake, so it's more likely they'll come looking for stuff from me. All right, so all we're gonna do is we're gonna mix it till, incorporate it well together. If you're using a mixer, no more than, I use about 4-ish. My butter's still a little hard, but I'll check with my spoon. So even though it looks a little grainy, I'll show you there now. When I take it out, it's a little grainy sugar-wise, but when I run the back of my spoon through it, it incorporates together well, and that's how I know my sugar and my butter are creamed well. So it's either gonna look super creamy. Oh, fair. That's what neighbors are for. That's when you have real nice neighbors, when you can borrow from each other and you can spend time. And so if you're using a mixer, it's worth taking a spoon because sometimes butter sticks around the bottom of the bowl, especially the KitchenAids because they have the divot in the bottom. They're not fully smooth along the bottom. So mine's creamed together pretty neatly. And then all you're going to do is add an egg. Just going to add 1 egg. I'm gonna see if I can actually pull this off. Normally I can. These are fresh eggs too. So I can normally crack with. Yeah, no shells. Depends on how fresh the egg is. Trick though, if you ever get a shell fall in, use piece of the shell, break it in half and use piece of the shell to scoop it out. Or part of the egg to scoop it out, it actually picks up the shells easy in your finger. Because if you ever try to poke part of the shell to get it out, it will go, it's hard to pick out. There we go, that's in there. Here we go, and then just gonna toss it back on. And all you do is gonna mix it. And if you have a wooden spoon, just mix it until your egg is mixed in evenly. It takes literally like 10 seconds. There you go. And I like to take this side of my mixer and just bang it a little bit. So mine looks like that. So you can see it sliding a little bit. That's because I add the egg and everything's creamed very nicely together. If you have some sugar clumps, that's okay. As long as for the most part your sugar is mixed through. You might end up with 1 or 2, but that's not gonna hurt your baby. So, you all good so far? So then, awesome. Sugar, butter, eggs, done. And then now is where I'll toss in my vanilla extract, which is, according to our trusty recipe, it is, where are you two on this? 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. You can also eyeball it. I kind of do. I have a 1 teaspoon spoon on the back as well. You can also throw in a dash of salt in this. For your dry ingredients, it's best to do it in a separate bowl so you don't get clumps of cocoa powder mixed to actually have your cocoa powder and your flour go through seamlessly. It's easy just to get a second bowl and then put your cocoa, your flour, flour, baking soda, coffee, and cocoa all in one bowl, and just mix that through so that it doesn't, so it's uniform. And I'm gonna grab, see, there's my roasted filberts and my hazelnuts. I'll nicely toast it. I'll beat those with a rolling pin before I throw them in. So I'm just gonna let them cool for a little bit. Okay, so grab a second bowl. Don't need a huge one, so flour, baking soda, teaspoon of baking soda. I rarely use, I just use the regular teaspoon. After eggs, you add vanilla right. Yes, you just add the vanilla right in. And then in a separate bowl, mix all your dry together, including the coffee, if you decide to put in. So a tablespoon, yes, I know I'm using a teaspoon, but 3 teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon. So yes, and this is instant. Yes, it's instant. I like the hint of coffee. Coffee also brings out chocolate. So if you have a little bit of instant coffee, you can. If not, it doesn't affect the taste of the cookies. When I made these for school, I didn't put coffee in. Cocoa powder, so cocoa powder and flour. I know some students ask about difference between like using the dry measure and the wet measure. So this is technically a wet measuring cup. You have the dry ones that you can level off easier. I use either or. To me, it's not. I use either or, depending on what I have, what I'm making, and what I'm doing. It doesn't bother me. That's a little bit too much flour. Yep. Also, be careful with how much cocoa powder you add. If you add too much cocoa powder, like stick to what it says in the recipe. If you add too much, it'll make your cookies bitter. We all think because it's cocoa, it's all great, but generally cocoa is great. But what the problem is that if you add too much, there's no sugar in this. So 1/3 of a cup of cocoa powder. And I'm just going to quickly rinse. How we all doing? Do you have anybody using mixers? Okay, not a problem. That's what I asked how we do, because I tend to sometimes go like wildfire depending on. So that's just a little. This is about 1/3. I remember making cupcakes one time, and I thought, ooh, I'll make them more chocolatey. So I threw in a little bit extra cocoa powder. It was the most bitter things ever. I actually had to throw them out. It's the first time in a long time I had to throw out baking. So I gotta add my salt to this, because did I add my salt to this? Yes, I started with salt. I generally start with the lowest quantities first, so I don't forget. Or I either go smallest to largest or largest to smallest. And I'm not the math teacher in me. That's just, I don't forget. So I started with the smallest. I started with coffee and salt, and then I added my cocoa powder and my flour. And that's what it's going to look like. You're going to see it's going to look kind of a little bit like hot chocolate powder. That if you don't have cocoa powder, you can actually put hot chocolate in. I've done that before because I forgot to buy cocoa powder. So I've used hot chocolate, and I just cut the sugar down. I think I used 1/2 cup of hot chocolate, and I cut out the white sugar and just used brown sugar, and it turned out okay. So sometimes improvisation works really well. So for those who have their dry measured, you're going to put about half the dry in and then mix it through. Because there is the odd time, because we are at a high elevation and not as much moisture, that if you add all the dry, it'll become too dry. And it's really hard with cookies to go and add more wet ingredients, because then it generally makes your dough tough. So what I always say, half, half, half. So start with half of your dry, mix it through, and then take half of what's left, so technically a quarter of your dry, and then mix it all through, just until it's a texture where it holds together, that you can roll it with your hands without it all coming off on your hands. So I'm gonna start by I'm gonna put half of mine in. And I never put my chocolate chips in with this. I always wait for that to be fully done first before. So I'm just gonna shake about half in. Doesn't have to be exact. And start on a low speed so that you don't get the poof of flour come up, or the poof of the dry ingredients. That happens. Or if you have a screen that you put on a mixer, that's fine too. But just take the time to slowly incorporate them. So I just mix a little bit, and I just kind of look to make sure that it's starting to mix through. You can see that the cocoa is also already starting to change my batter. Oops, can't knock that over. So, and I'm just going to clean down my sides as I'm going. Clean down my sides and mix a little more. There, so I cleaned down my sides. The first lot's incorporated. Again, I'm going to take another half of what's left. So I still got some left. I have made them to the point where they were fully like a full batter before I put all the dry in. I've also had it where I don't have enough dry and I have to add a little bit more. It all depends. All depends on if you're using large eggs, your butter, everything. So my batter's starting to take a little bit more of a shape. Still pretty gooey, but it's starting to form more of a dough instead of a batter. Take the time if you're mixing too to get right at the bottom of your bowl, because sometimes I used to joke and say with my niece, that's where the flour likes to hide. Because every time you go and the top part of the batter is nice, and then the second you put the spoon at the bottom, you can see all the batter coming up, all the flour coming up, and you're just like, darn it. So mine's starting to look a little bit like an icing consistency versus a cookie consistency. So I'm just going to put the last in, and then my batter should be fine. And I did forget to add salt. I know I did now, because I'm looking at it like, I added baking soda, I didn't add salt. There. I actually don't mix it all the way through with my mixer. I only mix it till it starts, I'll show you what it looks like now. So it looks like that. It's a little crumbly. And I do that because now I know it's slightly undermixed. If I mix the rest with a spatula, or it depends on if you have gloves, I have also used my hands, just to get the feel. Because I find sometimes it's very easy to when you're using a mixer, it's very easy to over mix them. and then they look super crumbly, like they're going to fall apart, which is not what we want. Yours is like icing. Did you pour in all your dry ingredients if yours is like icing? So someone asked a really good question. If it's like an icing consistency, how do we fix it? So like I said, my next question is there any, do you have any dry ingredients left, or do you have them all in? If you have dry ingredients left, like in your bowl that you combined, put that in. I actually used all, and also scrape around the bottom of your bowl, because sometimes you'll have little pockets towards the bottom. Like I'm using a little mini spatula just to kind of work down around the bottom. I use them all. So, okay, and it's still looking like icing. That means you might have a little bit too much butter, or your eggs could be slightly on the large side. So, not the whisk. I tend to use the whisk if I'm doing things like whipped cream, anything that I'm starting almost with a liquid consistency, or things I want to like make really frothy. So like if I was just doing eggs and sugar, or egg whites and sugar to make meringue, then I would use the whisk. For stuff like cookies, I like the paddle attachment, especially if my butter's a little on the soft side, because I find it mixes it really well without over mixing it or whipping it and adding too much air to your batter. So I tend to use a whisk for batters. I'll use paddles for dough, for like light doughs like cookies. And if I'm doing a heavy dough like pizza dough, I'll use the dough hook. That's a great question. And if you ever get butter in a whisk and you can't, if your butter's too hard and you're trying to get it to, now I've used the whisk before with butter and sugar, especially when I'm using margarine, it mixes it together pretty quickly. But I just like the paddle attachment. Then you don't have to switch. And if your butter's a little on the hard side, getting butter out of the whisk is a pain in the butt. So that's what mine looks like. It's a little, whoops, almost lost it. So it's a little clumpy, but it's holding together fine. That, and it's actually nice and soft. I will not mix it any more than that. I will add my chocolate chips and get ready to shape. So use them all. So the person if your dough is still dry, if it's still like icing, take a quarter of a cup of flour and a teaspoon of cocoa powder. And slowly put that in, just because all we want is a consistency like that holds. Yes, so start with a quarter cup of flour and a teaspoon of cocoa powder. One-third. So ratio is a cup to a third a cup of cocoa powder. So if you're doing a quarter of a cup of cocoa powder, it means you need a 12th. Third of a cup of cocoa powder, so it's 3 tablespoon. Yeah, or even a tablespoon of cocoa powder will be okay. Yeah, quarter of a cup, 2 teaspoon and a half, 2 tablespoons. Yeah, that works. Okay, so and then we have to add more too. 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. I'm using my trusty Chip-Its. I also have these that I might use instead because I'm going to add my hazelnuts and stuff in. They're like mini chocolate chips. Apparently though that these are regular, so they're little semi-sweet size. They're little tiny mini ones. I kind of like those too because they melt a little bit better, or they'll melt as they bake. It all depends on what you like. And if you want to add a little bit more chocolate chips, you can. I'm going to add, it says a cup, but in all reality, if you add a cup and a half, or, teaspoon or tablespoon. You could add a tablespoon and you'd be fine. I'm actually just going to add a cup of chocolate. Okay. Okay. So, and then all you're going to do is, If you want to mix them in with your hands, you can. If you have a wooden spoon, that works really well, or a spatula. I just dump them all in, and you're just gonna lightly turn your dough until your chocolate chips are incorporated. We don't, essentially till the majority of the chocolate chips is sticking in the dough and they're not around your bowl. And that's because we don't want to overmix our dough, and we want our dough to stay nice and soft. So if you've ever played with, say, I guess the texture feels a little bit like Play-Doh, maybe a little softer than Play-Doh, is what the texture of my batter feels like. And because it's only meaty, all right, I'm just gonna incorporate that down a little bit, and actually I can finish with my spatula. So just mix them through. So how's the batter going for those who are you guys at your chocolate chip stage? And all I'm doing is turning it around. And actually, if I lift it out to show you, that's my dough. All my chocolate chips, and I literally have no chocolate chips and no mess in my bowl. Because all I did was slowly drop it. And I just slowly incorporated everything back into it. And I'm gonna wash my hands again. There. Oh, awesome. Yeah, load them on the baking sheet. This says it takes about 16 to 20 cookies. So that's generally if you use about a tablespoon. Portion of cookies around a tablespoon. Yeah, around a tablespoon. So around a tablespoon this isn't a tablespoon, so around it would just be a little bit over. You can make them bigger if you want. So when they say around a tablespoon, it's about that much. Yeah, like I said, you can make them bigger if you want. Normally when I do a batter like this, it only makes about 8 cookies. I make them about that big. And they do spread out a bit while baking. I am going to crush my hazelnuts, my filberts. They crush relatively easily after they're baked. I'm not gonna beat them because that'll make a lot of noise. You can use a ladle and rock it down on that, and that actually crushes them too. Or the back of a spoon. I just put my hand over them so it makes it easy. Okay. I could just beat them with a rolling pin too. That's always a lot of fun. If you take them, put them in a Ziploc bag, and then take a rolling pin and beat the bejeepers out of them, that works great. Because then they don't flick anywhere either. I've also put them on, just put them on a cutting board with a knife and squish them down with the blade of a knife too. With the side of a knife, and like you would crush garlic. I've done that too. I'm just using this because I don't want you playing with knives. Without parental supervision, I don't want anyone to get hurt. So how's the batter going for the... So Missy, we need to add some more flour. How's the batter going now? There you go. So don't preheat your oven to 350. It says 8 minutes. Generally, cookies take anywhere between 10 to 12. If you take them out in 8, when they're slightly browning around the corner, they're still going to be gooey in the center. If you let them set all the way, they will cook all the way through and leave a gooey texture. So that is completely up to you. If you like your cookies a little on the harder side. So my walnuts and my hazelnuts are all crushed. So I'm going to toss that in. I know it doesn't call for nuts in the recipe, but it all depends on your taste, whatever you want to do. Another option that's really good is pretzels, salted pretzels. Or if you have those little caramels, the little tiny square caramels, you can crush those up. I've crushed mint leaves. I've done matcha. There's a couple of other options. Perfect. So I guess. Good. So I'm just literally. I'm just getting the rest of my nuts through a bit. I'm also gonna. If you're using a mixer, don't forget to lock it and make sure that you unplug it when you're not using it. It does give you a fright if you accidentally turn on the mixer when you're moving it. So I tend to unplug it as soon as I'm done. Alrighty. So when you guys get them all portioned out, let me know how many cookies you get. And work mine a little bit with my hands because the dough to get to work nuts in sometimes it gets a little tougher because they keep falling out. This will be similar to my Eat More bars. So I do I'm just gonna shape mine with my hands because it goes a little. I'm just going to quickly just pinch a piece and put it on the plate. And yes, I wash my hands like a gazillion times throughout this. Also going to use a spoon to break this. Now, yes, so I was making this for in our foods room and stuff. I would not be using my fingers. I would be wearing gloves. But my hands are clean. It's going to be just probably me eating these, which is why I don't make double and triple batches of these because I don't. And if we were making this in class and I asked you guys to do this with your hands, yes, you would have gloves. Like we do with bannock. Bannock, we always mix with our hands because it's nice for feel. You get a nice feel on it. I caution you guys if you're eating the dough because it does have eggs in it, raw eggs in it, so be careful. You can do versions of this that's eggless. So you can actually have a cookie dough. You can make egg-free cookie dough, or what they call it, edible cookie dough. That does exist. Super delicious. I only make it when I'm putting it in ice cream though. Because I technically not a huge fan of the taste and texture of it. Yes and no, all depends. Oh wow! So if you have 12, I would get another pan going. I have 12 here on this sheet, and I'm going to start a second sheet. So I'm going to grab. Actually, I'm going to grab another. So they do spread out a bit. Do weary of space. Make sure you have a little bit of space in between them, and don't make them too high off the pan, and don't smush them too much, because we want them to puff, and we don't want them to join and have a massive cookie pan. There we go. I'm gonna set my timer for 8 while I'm measuring out the other ones. If you do cookie dough sometimes too, and you make a lot, you could actually roll them, put them in a container with wax paper, and you can freeze them for, I think it's a couple of weeks they hold well, probably a month or two. That you could actually freeze the cookie dough and freeze them in balls or in tablespoon portions so that when you want some, you can just pop a half dozen out or whatever. Throw them on the pan, bake them, and then you're good to go. I have a lot of extra nuts on the end, so I'm just gonna spread some out. I'll have enough to get this pan. This pan. Try to even out my cookies a little bit so they. So guys, I'm gonna remind you, if you could take a picture of you guys with your cookies that you wouldn't mind being submitted to Yearbook, that would be greatly appreciated because they're still looking for photos. Miss Ottoson that said they'll do a photo of Food Club so that we can you guys can submit all your creations. I took the picture so far and I'm gonna put a bunch more in. I'll get some more loaded up the weekend. There we go. Cool. That's my second pan. So I'm gonna get 18. I just want to portion down so I don't have to use a third pan. So I got 5.5 minutes on my first batch. Oh, sweet. You guys got a whole bunch of them. 21, awesome. Got 24, great. Yeah, I tend to go on the big side of cookies. So yeah, I got 18. So that's not terrible. So yeah, you guys excited for summer? Summer's coming up. I'll wash my hands again. Aw, yeah, it's all good. I just seen some. I don't know if you guys can all see the chat too, but it's okay. You can rewatch it. I did have some students tell me they are going to watch it later to because it's too hot in their house, so they can't cook till later, which is fine. It's going to be the same time next week, 3:15 on the 11th, and we're going to do no bake cheesecake. So I have a recipe for a no bake, and we're going to use that, and we're going to make a topping. So we can either cut fresh fruit and we'll do a compote and a glaze down, or I'm going to use berries. There's a berry from Newfoundland called a cloudberry, but we call it bake apples. So they're very tart berry, but they're really good on cheesecake. So I'm going to make a compote, and then we could probably do some nice skills if you want to make them look really pretty and do like strawberries or raspberries or cherries or anything on top. So yeah, we're gonna do mini ones. So you can make them in a muffin, like a muffin pan or muffin size, or you can make a full big one. It's completely up to you guys, but we're gonna do a no bake. Super easy, super good. I personally like no bake cheesecakes just as much as I like the baked ones because at least then I know how there's no egg in it. So you can taste it, you can play with flavors, they're very versatile. But yeah. So are you guys coming out? How are things going? Are you guys coming out the ovens? Some of you guys almost out the oven yet? I'm gonna have to learn how to do the whole like magic of editing, and when people click their hands and it jump, like the stop motion stuff. I'm gonna have to start learning how to do that more. Okay. Yeah, I look. Friday is the only day I can actually get home in time to do this. Sweet. Just put the first batch in my mind. Have 2.5 minutes, and I'm going to check my first batch. I always check them at the 8-minute mark. And because it's double chocolate, I can show you what to look for a little bit. You'll see they get solid around the outsides, and they might start turning a little brown. And sometimes they, depending on your oven and how hot it is or how hot it is or how well it holds the heat, you might have to leave them in for about 10 minutes and then let them set. Yeah. So do you guys have any favorites for cheesecake or anything that if you guys are planning on jumping in and checking out? I know some people can't comment because they don't have accounts, but they're still here watching. I meant to tell you guys at the beginning. That's normally the first thing I do is I turn on my oven. So like I turned on my oven before I started the stream. And some people have convection and it's done right away. Yeah, fair. I do a baked. I do a no bake one. So it's. I don't want to see it kind of taste the cross between a cheesecake and pudding, but it's super. Has a really nice texture to it. Oh, you've never had cheesecake before? Well, then you should make it and try it. I can't. It's hard to describe what it tastes like. I've made all kinds. It just has. Have you had cream cheese? You can taste the cream cheese in it, but it's sweetened, so it's not like strong cream cheese. It's kind of it's hard to say. It's hard to describe. So my first ones look like this so far. Now mine are not set up along the sides. They're starting to look set. There's no brownness around the outside of them at all. They're very, very soft if you tap them. So I'm going to put mine in for about another 2 minutes. So, and for those joined just joining in, I put roasted hazelnuts and walnuts in these. I just didn't. The recipe doesn't have nuts in them, but you can put that in as an option if you like. So I'm going to go for another 2, and I'm going to leave it at 10. I'm not going to put them in any longer, because any longer, then they're going to get hard. Thanks. They're the ones I made for math this year, minus the nuts. So it's the closest recipe. The proportions are pretty well even. I just like quadrupled it when I had to make cookies for the grade 7s. So yeah, it works really good. As you can tell, other than checking my measurements, I don't really look at the recipe because generally any kind of cookie you're doing, cream your butter and your sugar first, measure your dry off onto the side, and then slowly incorporate it. Yeah, I heard a couple of the one or two of the grade 9s told me that their siblings in grade 7 had said that the cookies were really good. Yep, that was myself and Miss Pollock stayed up. Nope, they're the Pie Day ones. So these are except I put nuts in them because I'm making these at home for me and for people I know who don't have nut allergies. And I like hazelnuts or filberts and walnuts in my cookies. So, but yeah, it's pretty much it's fairly close. The recipe I used didn't have coffee And I think I used, no, that's pretty well it. It's pretty much around the same. Yeah, so this is the recipe we're making today. And so I got my recipe from Chef Savvy. So this is the recipe that we're using today. So I don't own this, but I'm giving them credit for boiling it for you guys. Generally, I use something very similar. I use old cookbooks. I have a collection of old cookbooks that I like to reference from, and then I just play around with ingredients. So these are the ones I do for those who like peanut butter cookies. I do have a peanut butter ball recipe where it's like peanut butter, Rice Krispies, a bit of icing sugar, and it makes the ball, and then you roll in chocolate, and then you can put crushed peanuts on top, and then you freeze them. So they're like a freezer cookie, and they're really, really good. I used to make them with my mom every Christmas. So now they're a little harder around the sides, so they're a bit more set up. So I'm going to leave these out, and I'm going to put 2.5 minutes on the oven for my second batch because I put them in 2.5 minutes late after these were already in. So then that's the first batch, done and ready to go. I'm going to let them cool completely before I try to take them off my silicone pad, because if I don't, they're gooey, and they'll also they'll fall apart and crumble. So I'm going to leave them until they're nice and cold. And I'm just going to let them sit 2.5 minutes, and then that timer's done. Or if you like super gooey cookies and want to leave them for a few minutes, you can leave them for 2 to 3 minutes and then try to peel them off with a glass. Have a nice cold glass of milk. I might actually do that. So yeah, that's the size of mine. And yeah, they turned out pretty good. There's also, I have to think of what else there's another one I've done before that you make ice cream sandwiches. So if you have an ice cream that you really like a vanilla or a chocolate chip or a cookie dough, you could actually, if these cookies were if you cook them a little longer so that they're harder, you could put ice cream in between and freeze them and make ice cream sandwiches from them too. So that's another option. So if you cook them longer so that they are a little harder, yeah, you can make ice cream sandwiches. That turned out. I used to make ice cream sandwiches with, I'd use oatmeal cookies. Use oatmeal cookies, put your ice cream in the middle, or your many years of baking where my mom would always be like, clean as you go, clean as you go. So yes, I know if you think your kitchen looks bad, can you imagine the food room after 30 junior high kids are cooking? And I know that, and there's people who has been in my foods class who know what I'm talking about. If you think an earthquake, tornado goes through, Twister has nothing. The movie Twister has nothing on the food room sometimes. I remember I made ice cream one time with kiddos. I was cleaning salt off the floors and that for like a straight week trying to get them. That's how my mom taught me. My mom, my stepmom, Garesol, used to be a baker by trade for a bit. My mom also has her baking courses, and my aunt works in a college kitchen. So, and when we grew up in small kitchens, so you clean everything as you go. And these so these are holding their shape, they're solid. Those are done too. So these are all good to go. The cleaning as you go also comes from too, depending on how much space and how many bowls and stuff you have. So literally off screen, all I have there are my ingredients, and I have a bowl that's fairly cleaned up. And yeah, I just quickly rinse everything up, put it away, put the ingredients back in the cupboard, and off we go, and the kitchen's clean. And that also comes from practice of trying to prep and cook period after period, doing demo days with kiddos. And my mom kind of instilled that into me. That's you clean as you go. Saves time in the end too. And I'm going to instill it to you guys clean as you go because it saves your parents time. And also and it's just easier. It makes it more efficient. It's like learning your times tables. You know your times tables very well. It makes a lot of things in math pretty efficient. So how are you guys doing with this? You guys some of them are coming out there now, or nope, too soft to take one off yet. I was gonna try though. Oh, fair. Fair. I'm glad there's parents be like, done the first batch. Sweet. I love it when parents like, you have to clean the kitchen, because I've actually worked with students who have never ever cleaned a kit, who have never leftovers, who've never washed dishes before. Everything goes in the dishwasher. So kudos to you guys for being responsible and getting everything cleaned up and nice for your parents and for your family and for you guys too. Because when you get grown up and you're out on your own doing this, you'll be very thankful that you did. So I'm just going to clean up a little bit. I'm not going to cut out just yet because, well, mine are all out. Oven's off. I just want to see how you guys are coming out. The funny thing is, this was full before I started, so I got through quite a bit of my baking cupboard's getting a little bit on the scarce side, which is all good. I bake so much. I still have so much from Christmas and stuff too. I stocked my cupboards with everything because when Christmas time rolled around, it's like other things with COVID. You can't find a bike. You can't find outdoor equipment. I couldn't find molasses for the longest time to make my ginger molasses cookies. Flour, sugar, chocolate chips, all that stuff was hard to get at one point. So I stocked up when I could, and now I still have a ton of it. You can throw those in there. They're all just chocolate chips. They're all semi-sweet, so. The other cool thing I'm going to tell you guys, because you're out here, and I told most of my students this week, so far, unless something drastic changes, I got the news this week that I'm teaching majorly foods next year. That we're going to get me back in the foods lab so we can all cook together. So I think things are going to be great. I hope everybody stays healthy and that things keep going the way they're going. Because then it looks like I'll be back teaching all you guys in person in the kitchen next year, which will be so much fun. Yeah, and it looks like, and there's a lot of people interested in grade 7. A bunch of grade 7s going into grade 8. So, okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. You guys don't have to stick around. If your cookies are coming out of the oven and you're getting cleaned up, thank you so much. What programs I want to do? Sweet. And you know what? You'll have time to try it. So, if you guys have any last questions, I'll end the stream here shortly. Thank you guys so much for coming out. It was great cooking with you guys again, and we'll see you next week. Have a safe and great weekend. And I don't see comments or questions, so have a great one, guys. We will see you in school on Monday. Bye.